What's up, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to talk about The Last Dragonborn. The protagonist we've had the pleasure of playing as throughout our adventures in Skyrim for the past nearly 14 years now is shrouded in mystery. Why were they trying to cross the border, and what border are we talking about exactly? Do they believe in the 9 divines, or maybe the 8 divines? What happens to them after the events of Skyrim? Let's ponder these questions together. The story we get from Ralof at the start of the game is that the Stormcloaks got ambushed by the Imperial Legion near Darkwater Crossing, and Ulfric himself was actually with them. This may have been because he was on his way back to Windhelm from Solitude after killing High King Torrig. The way this dialogue is written is a bit ambiguous, so let me clarify something here. Ralof makes it sound as if you got caught with them near Darkwater Crossing, but this doesn't seem to be true. I'm fairly confident that the intention here is that the last Dragonborn got caught coming up from Cyrodiil through the Pale Pass. Historically, the Elder Scrolls protagonists either come from outside of the setting of their game, or they're removed from it somehow, like how the Champion of Cyrodiil was in prison. It kinda has to be that way because it explains why no one in the setting knows you. So in this case, what makes sense for the last Dragonborn is that they came up from the Pale Pass, and it was bad timing because the Legion was on their way to Helgen with the Stormcloak prisoners. But we still have the question of, why were they going to Skyrim in the first place? Why were they choosing to go to a province that was in the middle of a civil war? Well, it's the kind of place someone might go if they were running from something. Because it's not a place that anyone would expect you to go, and even if they did, they may not follow you. This idea also makes sense when we consider that a lot of the previous protagonists have had criminal pasts as well. It could also explain the Dark Brotherhood contract on us. In case you've never had this random encounter, before you join the Dark Brotherhood, this assassin may come at you. It becomes possible when you hit level 5, and players often theorize just why would someone want you dead at that point. That's real early in the game. Well, maybe these assassins have been following the last Dragonborn for longer than we realize. Maybe someone they did harm to in their past ordered this contract on them, and that's why they ran to Skyrim. They figured the assassins may not follow them there. It's a possibility, but the note these assassins drop is signed by Astrid. Prior to Cicero arriving with the Night Mother, the way that they would hear about contracts was word of mouth, and if the Dragonborn came from Cyrodiil or somewhere outside of Skyrim, then I think it's unlikely that Astrid would have heard about someone performing the Black Sacrament to order a contract on you if you were that far away, you know what I mean? So this is an entertaining possibility, and I'll absolutely consider it in future roleplays. I definitely see a lot of potential, like if you've got the mod Beyond Skyrim Bruma and the mod Alternative Start, where that lets you start in Bruma. Like if you can imagine that maybe like something you did in Bruma caught up with you and someone ordered a contract on you, then you ran to Skyrim. But I'm not gonna swear by this in terms of the actual theory. I do have another idea of what the last Dragonborn could be running from, and it's a fun one. When you start the Taste of Death, Iola is very sure that you've eaten NPCs before. There's also a few times that dialogue comes up, like with Serana, where there's reference to the last Dragonborn having a family. So, if we combine those two ideas, maybe the last Dragonborn consumed their family, then ran to Skyrim. And Bethesda has told a story just like that before, Ian West from Arafu. So if there's any truth to this, it's probably just some developers pulling a joke on us more than anything else, and there definitely are some developers I could see going for something like this. You know, we play this game thinking we're this amazing hero, but little do we know that Ma and Pa Last Dragonborn are in our belly. But I don't really think they hinted at what the last Dragonborn was doing before the events of Skyrim much. I think the extent of it is that, yeah, you're running from something, but they don't want us to read into what. Contrary to the Fallout experience, where they give you a few things to work with, they really don't like giving you much for Elder Scrolls. And I wouldn't say that either way of doing things is really better than the other. I like both. Our next question is, what does the last Dragonborn believe? What religion do they follow? Well, one thing I've noticed in my experience is I don't think there's a single dialogue option in this game in which you can directly deny believing in Talos. And that makes a lot of stylistic sense given the atmosphere that's set up in Skyrim. Many fans view picking your side in the Civil War as asking what would Talos do? And that's part of what's led to this common theory that the last Dragonborn is a reincarnation of Talos, and I think there is some weight to that. So I'm not sure about the rest of the 9 divines, but I'm confident that the last Dragonborn believes in Talos. Now it's time for what I think is really the most captivating question about the last Dragonborn. What happens to them after the events of Skyrim? The previous protagonists have disappeared in some way, and I think that kind of needs to happen with this one too, because it's looking like ES6 isn't going to take place long after Skyrim. At least not in terms of the canonical timeline. In terms of us actually playing it, yeah, it's been a pretty long time, man. So the last Dragonborn kind of needs to disappear in some way to explain why they're not fighting in this second Great War that seems to be on the horizon. And given how things end in Skyrim, there are some obvious ways they can do that. Going off the main questline, perhaps they simply stayed in High Roughgar with the Greybeards, talking to the sky and practicing the Way of the Voice in their peaceful way. We can make a similar case for the Blades, like maybe the last Dragonborn is helping them rebuild in Skyhaven Temple. But I don't like this one as much because I think there's a chance we see these characters again. I can't fathom the Blades not fighting in the Second Great War. I think we might see Delphine and Esbern in the S6. And there's another slight problem with both these ideas. Generally, lore experts assume that main game plus DLC happens in chronological order by release. The major exception to that is you kind of have to assume that Operation Anchorage and the Pit take place either before you finish the main quest or after you start Broken Steel because of how that main quest ends. But when it comes to Skyrim, we tend to at least stick to the assumption that Dawnguard and Dragonborn happen after the main questline, just because that's what makes the most sense given what happens in each of those stories. So that doesn't rule the possibility that the last Dragonborn retired to High Roughgar or Skyhaven Temple out, but really it functions best if that happens right away after the main quest ends. So let's think about some possible epilogues based on the Dragonborn DLC. Because if main game plus DLC does indeed take place in chronological order by release, then this in theory is what the last Dragonborn did last. And that assumption has led to a pretty common theory that the last Dragonborn did indeed replace Miraak as Hermaeus Mora's champion. In which case, the likely epilogue is that they disappeared from Mundus because they moved to Apocrypha. Another theory, which I like, is that maybe they embraced a quiet, simple life with the Skull. After all, assuming that they don't end up in Apocrypha, that means they have to resist everything that Hermaeus Mora has to offer. Really, when you think about it, the best way to resist forbidden knowledge is to live a life where you don't need much knowledge. So maybe the last Dragonborn just stayed with the Skull after defeating Miraak. You know, during the day they go out and hunt, maybe they have some sort of role in the village, maybe they duel other Skull for fun, they find comfort in Freya's caboose, and that's it. I mean, that really stings for whoever they married back in Skyrim and possibly adopted kids with, but what are you gonna do? And there's also the many organizations they became the leader of, then just stopped showing up to work, but again, what are you gonna do? I suppose the last ending we might consider is that they settled down with their family at one of the homesteads, and that's what's up. Or maybe that theory I brought up in the beginning is true, and they end up beating this one too and running to some other province. Well, that's a wrap for this week, folks. Those are a few looming questions about the last Dragonborn that we tried our best to answer. So remember, when I hit 10,000 subs, I'm going to send this poll out, and whatever wins will be the next big video on my agenda. It won't necessarily be the very next video because I've started doing these little ones weekly, but it'll be the next big project. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with your Skyrim-loving friends. All that stuff helps me out a whole lot. And if you have any of your own theories about what happened to the last Dragonborn after Skyrim, please comment with them. I'd love to read them. Thanks again, everyone, and I will see you next time.